All right, everyone. This is the first episode of the For a Reason podcast, and I got to put a special message on the front. One, thank you for spending time with me in this podcast. It's a nonprofit. It's a not-for-profit venture. It's just to spread awareness and take the stigma away from mental health. So I hope that you guys enjoy it, and it's a resource for people to share their stories and just wherever God leads on that. But also, my camera shut off. There was a setting issue going on with the cameras. They're brand new. I've never had cameras like this before. And so they shut around the 12 or 15 minute mark. I apologize for that. And but the audio's still good and it continues on. So I'd appreciate your feedback on the podcast. I normally wouldn't post an episode like this, but I had to because it has such good content. So thank you and my apologies. On with the show. Perfect. All right. Hold on a sec before we start. I've always said your last name wrong.
Littell.
Littell.
Yeah.
Brent Littell. When
Yeah.
you spell it on Instagram, are you spelling it different to be cool, or is that how you actually spell
I
it?
don't want people to be able to find me.
But it's spelled regular Brent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want employees looking me up.
Okay. That makes sense. They don't want to see your Disneyland adventures?
Yeah. What I'm really afraid of is they go back 7 or 8 years and I made a joke or something that they try and get me with.
Yeah, you don't want them to dig up your Rodney King jokes or just kidding.
Yeah, I got all
those. All right. Well, hey, man, it's good to have you here, Brent. And it's been a long time, man.
Yeah.
One thing before we start, I got to tell you this. When I think of you, this comes to mind, and I've always wanted to tell you this. I haven't told you this, but I want to thank you for, you talked to me a lot after training jiu-jitsu, and it made a big difference, dude. Like to you, you're like to you is probably regular because everyone comes to you, for advice. But the one that really helped the most was when my friend a few years ago. Do you remember I talked to you, my friend who had taken his life? I couldn't make sense of it, and it was tearing me up. And I was like, man, and you broke down certain things, and the way you the information you gave me, I don't know, we don't have to go down that road, but that conversation, it gave me peace. I understood, I didn't understand why he did it. I understand now because I've been through crap in my life since and pushed somebody to the brink, but it made me just thank you, man. Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm going to go down this road and I don't want to get all sobby or whatever.
Okay. Especially around suicide, that form of grief is really complicated.
Yeah.
So many preventable, quote unquote, preventable deaths leave us with a lot of lingering questions. The bargaining, what could I have done? How could I have done it? What could other people have done? Anger towards the person. It's a very tricky form of grief, and it's hard, I think, for people who have never been suicidal to understand what gets people to that point. And it's often not an act of anger, it's an act of attempting to relieve themselves, right? Let me relieve myself from the pain that I'm in. And it's also hard to reframe a lot of our interactions with them to say, hey, I did bring them joy, and even though the end result might have been a completed suicide, there were moments of joy I brought in their life, and I need to reflect on those too.
Yeah. No. I'm with you, man. And not to go far down the rabbit hole of suicide, but that point you made about, you're discussing right now, how we're talking about how suicide is like a relief, and you don't understand it. I didn't understand it. I went through the phase of anger. It's weird. I'd be driving my car. I don't want to put his business out, so I'm gonna call him John Doe.
Okay.
But I'd be driving down the street and I'm like, damn it, John, really? Like it's you know what I'm saying? Like it would hit you. And what sucked is I spoke to him right before he did it, you know? And I kept thinking about, did I say something that contribute? Like it just sends this freaking thing spinning. But then I came to the conclusion, especially after talking to you, I was like, if he was gonna do it, some people, they're just gonna do it. You can't, like fantasizing about it, leading up to it and so forth. But just the ability to do it. I never understood that. But I had, there was a conversation you and I had over the phone, even though we don't see each other in person. We talk over social media
Right.
with jujitsu memes and jokes. And then I called you on the phone. But just to kind of share again is that now I understand because, having a trauma wound from my own personal experience, had a trauma wound. Like I had something happen to me that trauma was attached to it. The event of what happened to me didn't send me down the rabbit hole. It was the attached trauma that sent me down the rabbit hole. And when I went it was such a rapid decline. Like I could look back in retrospect and I probably declined from sane. Is it not sane to get there?
It's hard we don't like necessarily use those terms, but let's say detached from reality, right? And detached from ourselves, dissociated, is usually with trauma, where disorganized. I mean, these are kind of the more clinical things we would look at.
Okay. Disassociated. That's the correct word then?
It depends on here. Keep going and we'll see.
Well, you know what? I see a therapist, and my therapist told me, not with this, but the subsequent events, I was disassociated, which I'll explain in a second.
Right.
And then we'll get off the suicide.
Well, I
too.
think dissociation is important to talk about. It is one of the few symptoms that providers are really lacking in. I've had hundreds of therapists under my purview.
Yeah.
And when somebody with severe dissociation comes in, there are a lot of them who are lost. And they misdiagnose. Probably two of the big ones are derealization and depersonalization. They are diagnoses that a lot of therapists, even psychiatrists, miss. People experience them, and because the mental health community can kind of miss those, they feel especially crazy, right?
Yes.
That what we call stigma. They feel the stigma of feeling crazy. Like, wow, I have something so difficult and rare that my doctor seems a little bit shaky about treating it. My therapist doesn't really know and is seeking consultation on it. But it's actually really common, right? Derealization being the feeling that the world is not real, like I'm living in a movie. Most of us have experienced it in moments of very quick trauma, like when you're in a car accident and you feel like it's going slow motion and you're almost like you're looking at yourself from outside, and this can't be real at this moment. Depersonalization, where the voice in your head doesn't feel like your own anymore. Like, I just got to get back to that person I was. My brain doesn't feel like it's working right. I feel like the voice in my head isn't really the voice I had before. I'm not comfortable in myself. And those two, I know we've taken a tangent, but you've touched on a button for me, which is these diagnoses, which are highly related to trauma, highly related to suicide as well. They're really understudied, underpublished, and undertreated. And the only thing that the general public knows about dissociation is usually the worst one, which is the dissociative identity disorder, which we would call multiple personality disorder back in the day. Mm-hmm. And they go, oh, well, there's that one. And that's it. And it's like, no, there's a lot of grades of dissociation.
Okay. Wow, man. I mean, you're blowing my mind and you're explaining what I went through. Like there was a person, and I'll just keep it general, but we'll tie it all in. There was a person that I viewed as a family member, and like genuinely, but that's from my own childhood issues, but I viewed them as a family member, and they did a few things, but then like bad to me, but then did a cold discarding, like just like I was going to go to an old reference of the Gong Show, but I don't think anyone would get that.
Yeah.
But let's say America's Got Talent. Just 3x me, right? Bam, bam, get off the stage. Like I got cold cut off, no reasonable explanation, just, boom. And it was weird because there was a hurt of the relationship, of losing that relationship with that person. But it's weird in my mind. I could almost see the percentages. It was like 10% hurt of losing the relationship. But there was this 90% overwhelming, unidentified feeling that I never felt before. And I remember, I vividly remember going, something's wrong. Like there's something wrong with me. This was immediately after this person discarded me within moments. I was like, wait a second. There's something, a feeling I've never felt. Like I couldn't even describe it. And
like you didn't feel yourself.
yes. Yeah. It was immediate. It was like, like hitting hit with a dart in the neck with a drug. Like it was so fast.
And I just want to go back. I just want to go back to how I felt before.
Yeah, well, yes, but that eventually came. But the initial was, what is this? Like, did I just step into another dimension? Like everything seemed weird. And within days, I would say less than a week, it was like my mental health went to, what'd you call it with a D again?
Well, we have dissociation, decompensating.
All that, right? Dysregulated?
Dysregulated. Yeah, we got lots of D words.
It went to dysregulated within days. It was like someone put a chain around my ankle and was pulling me down a hole. And I was trying to do the David Goggins, like, no, we could do this. We could. And I was like,
wait. Got to cold plunge it, bro.
Yeah, cold plunge it, right? Nothing was working. And I was thinking, what is this? And by the time I went to a therapist, because I was seeing a therapist regularly it's a long story. There's some legal stuff going on. Not against me, but some legal stuff going on.
Don't worry. I get legal referrals all the time. Things from car accidents and the like,
Well, I was seeing a therapist with that, right? And I remember going in there, and by this point, I had chewed through my left cheek. This was within days. I hadn't slept. I'd probably lost maybe 10 pounds. I had told the person who dysregulated me, hey, please stop saying these things. They kept saying things that they knew what it was. They kept poking at it. They wouldn't stop. I said, dude, I've lost 10 pounds. Something's wrong with me. They didn't care. They just gave it to me. So I had to cut them off, right? When I went there, I chewed through my cheek, couldn't sleep, had lost 10 pounds within a week. And I remember I had a physical reaction. Like it was hot weather, but I was freezing and sweating at the same time.
Rapid heartbeat is often one of the things over a long, prolonged period of time.
Yeah. Yes. Rapid heart is that makes the metabolism crank. Is that what's going on there? Oh my God.
Well, it's the fight or flight. Well, there's actually more than fight or flight. It's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn.
What is fawn?
Fawn is, okay, it's a good question. Everyone asks that question. Let's say you're on the prison yard, okay?
Yeah.
And there's the biggest, baddest dude there.
Uh-huh.
And so you start thinking to yourself, dude, I can't take this guy. What am I going to do? I don't want to get on his bad side. Let me become his best friend.
Oh.
So you've encountered a threat, which is this big, bad dude who hurts people. So you end up getting on his side. You're like, okay, yeah, you're the best, you're the baddest, you're the this, so that they leave you alone.
Okay.
So that's what fawn is in the moment, you try and take the side of that person. You try and garner their good favor so that they don't hurt you.
Okay. I'm pretty sure I've done that before growing up. Absolutely. Being short and half Filipino.
Yeah. Who's the biggest bully here? Let me become friends with the bully. So then they don't bully me. They bully someone else.
Yes. Yeah. No. Okay. All right. Yeah. I've done that. So I think I went to more of, I don't know.
We were talking about your metabolic response, right? So then I was saying,
okay, it was
the
flight.
rapid heartbeat, is
flight.
Something's attacking me, right? Our amygdala, which is the part of our brain that is responsible for anxiety, it doesn't differentiate between emotional threat and physical threat. And so there was a threat. Well, what happens to us when there's a threat? We need to run or we need to fight. And so our body needs blood. So what does our heart do? It begins to accelerate to get blood to all your appendages so you can run, you can fight, you can do all of that. You sweat, so you become slippery. If you're prey and something's trying to hold on to you, you're now slippery and you can get away. So your body was in this extended period of threat, and the threat was to your identity, to your mental health. And that led you to, for multiple days on end, feeling cold, right? Adrenaline, that's part of your adrenal glands, right? Is kicking out so much adrenaline. If you've ever had an adrenaline dump and then you start shivering afterwards,
Okay.
you had an extended period of that.
Oh
So
my
your body
God.
was just in full threat mode, right? I have an intense threat going on. And so my body is responding to it. My amygdala, this almond part of our almond shaped part of our brain that's responsible for our anxiety. It's often called the lizard brain because it's part of it's kind of what our brain formed around. If you go to a lizard, they have a giant amygdala, and that's pretty much all they have in their brain, right? But then we develop this prefrontal cortex, which is why it's so important not to hit the front of your head. But we have the prefrontal cortex that says, "Hey, amygdala, shut up! It's not that kind of threat."
Okay. All
Right.
right.
So, and that, by the way, the interaction between the two of those, the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, is affected by how we grew up and our attachment. But in your case, you have this family figure, they're threatening some form of your identity, your amygdala is going off, and your prefrontal cortex can't get it to be quiet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here's the weird thing. My brain went into analyze mode, and I was like, why do I feel this way? But it was just so unidentifiable. Like I could not figure out like I've been through a divorce, and I would say that up until this, the divorce was the worst thing that has ever happened to me. It was so destabilizing mentally, but it was 100% emotional heartbreak, like the soul, death, it's right. And that went on for a while. I didn't feel that, but it had the same intensity. I was like, I don't feel like super heartbroken. And I remember maybe about day 5 or day 6, right? All the bad things that have happened to me when I was younger, all the major events flooded my mind. Like it was like someone opened the gate and we just 24/7. And I got to the point, it was like, I've said that I used this analogy before, but you ever seen those like movies, like say about the Iraq War or in a war, and they're in a base and the base is getting overrun. They go, the enemy's inside the wire. He's inside the wire. Like bomb us. Like it's over. We're overrun. That's what it felt like. I wasn't able to hold anything back anymore, and I ended up doing EMDR, which I'll discuss at another time or explain at another time. But that's what saved my life. EMDR. And I thank God for EMDR, but that took a few weeks to get to get the scheduling, find someone or whatever, a good person. So let's say week 2, like this is a rapid decline of mental health. Like at the point leading up to it, I was running my business. I was training for the world championships of jiu-jitsu. I was ready to go. Within, I'd say, a 24-hour period of being told those words, it just sent me down a roller coaster. Day 3, I'm done. And then, probably about week 2, the suffering was so bad, I had lost my will to live. It broke me down to, like, I've never been overwhelmed. Like, I did not know that psychological suffering. Would you agree that psychological suffering is probably the worst form of suffering?
There are no pain pills that really work for psychological suffering, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So when we look at it, physical suffering, in the end, you can go get some Dilaudid and kind of numb yourself for a while. All of the drugs in the world can't really get away from emotional suffering. I know people would make the argument that heroin will get rid of it or whatever it may be, but I've yet to meet a really happy heroin user. So
Yes, yeah. That doesn't work out too well.
right,
Yeah, and you could actually use that drug for pain for long term.
right.
Yeah, but yeah. So, to bring it full circle regarding suicide, the thought of not wanting to live, I was I was already there. I lost my will to live, and I was at the point of like wanting to die, but I did not take any steps at that point. And I remember thinking, I actually thought of my friend for a moment and thought, I get it. I get it, man. People don't know, like, people look at the one event, like the straw that broke the camel's back is, oh, really? He quit over that? Why'd he quit? Why did he even quit? No, dude. It's the monsters. It's the monsters from all the years, especially childhood years. Those guys came out to the party, and just absolutely, they showed up in full force. And I have like a profound actually that's the inspiration of this podcast, which, I mean, not just the inspiration. The epiphany of, I was like, we need to get these resources out, like with people like you, all your areas of expertise. People need to know this stuff. A lot of people right now that are probably even listening to this are probably like, that's me. And they don't know what to do. They didn't know that these resources are out there. And I thank God that I have friends, an inner circle that check on me enough. And one of my friends saw me. And by the time I went to EMDR 3 weeks later, I was probably about 24 pounds, lost 24 pounds. And it didn't help that I had a heart condition that at the time the doctors didn't have regulated. So I could have a heart attack or stroke, 90% chance at any moment. So that's floating in the back, right? So I was like, dude, when it rains, it pours. But so my point is that I respect it now, and I respect mental health. I don't look at it like, oh, well, my friend that took his life, man, he took the easy way out. That's not the easy way out. It's not, because to do that's not easy. That's a hard path too, but I could understand that there's suffering, silent suffering that could be so bad that you need a break. You need out.
Right. There it's also Suicide Awareness Month right now, so
Oh, is it?
we're having that discussion.
Oh, well, crap. Here we go.
Yeah, if I had my badge on, you'd see the my little pin and stuff. But so we have to whenever talking about suicide, I always want to be a little careful, because I don't also want to give tacit permission. So what I will say about it, and tacit permission meaning, like, when you begin to say, yeah, I see why people take the way out, right? I don't want to say like, so for anyone out there suffering, like, here's a
green light.
Yeah, no. And what I talk to people about is that when they get to that point, it's almost like a form of psychosis. Nobody is going to agree with me in my community with using that term. I just don't have a better term for it. But it's the loss of connection to reality, because the belief is that what's happening to me right now will not stop happening, or what I'm feeling right now, I will not stop feeling. And the reality is that there is no feeling that lasts forever. There is no thought that lasts forever. We get in that rut and we start to see no way out. However, as every feeling we ever have is transient. So we have to stop looking from this very myopic perspective of the moment today is the moment tomorrow is right. We cannot predict how we're going to be, and to give it a completely pessimistic slant is a loss of contact with the reality that we've had for our whole lives, which is ups and downs, and even people who are suffering. I've run inpatient mental health facilities, outpatient. I've seen, people from all walks of life and at all levels of mental health decline. And there are people who tell me, I'm having I have the worst life and all this, but they still find moments of joy in their life.
Yeah.
And they may be fewer and far between, but this belief system during that moment before suicide, it's almost, we have to look at it like a fit of suicide as well, because people think everyone who commits suicide has this long-standing plan that they've been thinking about for days, and there are definitely those people. So for some of them, there's a period of agitation right beforehand, and then there's a moment of peace, what we call flight to health, because they have now made peace with the fact that they're going to die, so all their problems kind of go away. They go, okay, well, I don't have to worry about it. Like if they have financial problems, I don't have to worry about that anymore, because that's not going to, if I do this, I'm not going to be around to face that issue. Man, I got lost. I started visualizing somebody that I had lost, so kind of who had that. But I was talking about fits of suicide. But there are some people who have these just kind of moments out of nowhere. It's very quick and fleeting. It can be for like 10 or 15 minutes. Those are the people that actually scare us practitioners the most, who kind of, have been going through life, aren't having a lot of suicidal ideation, then something hits them, whatever it may be. It can just be the time of year. and reminds them of an anniversary of something bad that happens, and then they'd go, I should just end it. And they only have like this quick 15-minute window where they have this from feeling to execution. And if you interject during that time, then afterward they go, I don't know what came over me during that time. They have these little bouts. So our view of suicide is always that like it's been a long-standing plan. They're collecting the means that they're going to do. Maybe they write a note. They find the location and then they tie up loose ends. They give away their things that are of value to them. They tell people some final kind of weird cryptic goodbyes, but that's not always how it goes. Sometimes it's just a very quick burst. Their mind goes into a dark place. They have the means available and they go there too.
What you're saying reminds me of that guy. I don't know his name, but he's a motivational speaker now. He jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. He survived.
I feel like I've heard about this. Yeah.
Yeah, he said that partway down, he's decided, I don't want to do this. Right? Yeah, a little too late.
Yeah. Well, he's here.
Yeah, but I mean, it's very rare because he broke, I forget the speed. It's 70-something miles an hour. You hit the water. And he went in feet first.
Right.
And he went in feet first. And he goes, another thing people don't realize is that when you hit the water, you go down 70 feet. So he went down pretty far. And he was like, I don't want to die. And his legs didn't work anymore because he had injured his spine. So he said he was swimming, like just like with his arms and, made it to the surface and was able to float. And there's a few other things. There's actually some animals. I think it was what's out there? Not a walrus. One of those seals.
Sure.
The seals were pushing him up.
Oh.
Pushed him up. Yeah. And there's witnesses that saw it. Yeah, there's witnesses that saw it. So there's a statue that people they put out there or whatever. But yeah, that must have been a fleeting one then, right? Like because he said that when he was on the edge, he goes, if someone even just says hi to me or something, I will not do this. Like he said, he was so rational.
Yeah.
And he goes, people are taking pictures, looking at him, and just he was invisible. And he was like, I'm going. But yeah, let me before I get off this topic, I want to say one thing too, because yeah, you're right. By me saying I get it, I'm just expressing that I understand it now.
Yes.
And I have a respect for it. Like before, I had no respect. I'm being
I know what you're saying.
Honest.
Right, is we want to degrade the person who did it as somehow weaker, not as intelligent,
a
whatever.
quitter,
maybe.
like, man, they give up. Yes. And now, like, I get why, like soldiers, come back from the war and they do it. Like there's so much pain. There's so much pain inside that it's indescribable. It's just it's like radioactive pain. But so I want to point out that one, don't ever do it. Whoever's listening, don't ever do that. But also, I mean, don't ever do it, because what happens, I've been on the receiving end of someone who's done it, and it's like your pain is dumped out onto them. It was dumped out onto me. I got to carry it for the rest of my life. And I've learned to navigate it and deal with it. But even his closer family, they're struggling.
Yeah. God, I can't believe I'm forgetting this. I'm sure on my drive home I'll remember. It's either the gift of 30 or the gift of 20, and I can't remember it. But family members, those close to somebody who commits suicide, are at 20% or 30%. I don't want to spit out the statistic incorrectly. So it's one of those two, or somewhere in the ballpark, are more likely to commit suicide then. So you, by the act of doing it, have now put everyone in your social circles at risk.
That makes sense. That makes sense, because you read about someone who's done it and they go, oh, his brother committed suicide or his dad. Or like, is it running the family? No, it's that, right?
Right. There's a contagion effect to suicide that people don't realize either. So when a high schooler commits suicide, it's a big deal. I mean, not only because they're a young life, but also because we see a lot of then people at that same school or nearby schools that knew the kid, and you'll see an increase in suicide attempts or completed suicides around that time. Also, whenever a celebrity commits suicide, we see an increase in suicide. When Robin Williams committed suicide, we see a spike in suicides, because people also go, wow. And that's what I talked about, like the tacit permission. is people go, wow, if that guy who I thought their life was together, I mean, with Robin Williams, that guy's a celebrity. People didn't know his medical issues that were going on, and he's doing it, and I've got my problems, and I've never had the joy and, been in Miss Doubtfire and Good Morning Vietnam or whatever. My life's never been even close. Why am I still here? And so we have to be very careful too. Like what you're pointing out is the contagion effect is suicide is contagious. And so when you do it, you put everyone else at risk. And that's not something I think anybody wants to do.
Yeah. And one thing too, I think people look at it as, well, Robin Williams did, it must not be that bad. Like it's almost like a green light, like,
Yeah.
it almost makes it kind of a little bit more okay.
Yeah, there was so I was working as part of a crisis stabilization team, and that show, and I never watched it, but it was called 13 Reasons Why.
Yeah.
And I didn't watch it because I was so angry at the show, because it made my the calls to the crisis stabilization. Basically, you go to your school counselor or you're at your doctor's office and then you say, I want to commit suicide, and then we would come out as part of a team and assess, okay, do you need to be hospitalized, or can you meet with a mental health person within a day, 24 hours, and see them. And when that show came out, the number of calls, the frequency of calls went up so much. And I was like, I hate this show. So education with suicide is so tricky because I don't think the creators ever intended that.
They probably didn't even know.
Right. And like I said, I haven't even seen it, but it was probably cathartic for them to write it. And they also probably thought they were getting out good messaging.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the show, but the reality was I think a character in it died of suicide, and then it was kind of like a post-mortem. Whatever it was, there was the element of suicide to it, and really getting into the mind of the person who committed suicide. So then all the kids who watched it.
Yeah. Actually, I watched the first season of it. Well, maybe not the whole first season. No,
Yeah.
I watched a few episodes. Take that back. A few episodes. And see, back then I had the mindset of like, you weak, entitled kids. Because I grew up in a bad area, not the best. So I'm like, dude, I would give to have your life. So I was looking at this like, I can't take this crap. But now, and to explain how the show works, it was basically, I think it was a video or a letter. And they're explaining the 13 reasons why. And it's like, well, Brent, you remember that one time you took my girlfriend and then rubbed it in my face? Okay, that's reason number 3. Like they just went down a list. And so...
Right. And you bring up a great point, which is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So you looked at the kid, let's say it's an upper middle class kid or something to that extent, and they commit suicide. And then we go, man, I wish if I had their housing situation, if I had their money situation, they got fresh clothes or the newest kicks.
It'd be 13
whatever.
Reasons Why I'm balling.
Yeah.
That's what it'd be called then.
And that is a belief system that's out there. And it's actually, it doesn't harm the recipient of the envy as much as it harms the envious, but it can hurt the envied as well. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's a basic, and I'm not going to do it justice, but it's a basic psychological premise created by Maslow, and it was the idea of how do we become happy. So he built this pyramid, and with each level you go up, you can't go up unless you have the level below. So the bottom level is physiological needs. What I call the rule of 3s or rule of 2s, depends what medic you ask. And so those are your absolute needs to survive. Air, right? We can go 2 or 3 minutes without air, and then we're, virgin on death. Water, we can go 2 or 3 days without water, and then we're going to die, depending on, the temperature. Could be 2 or 3 hours if you're in Vegas. And then food, we can go 2 or 3 weeks without food, and then we die.
Which I learned.
Yeah. So that's that bottom rung. You cannot get happy unless you have those things. And then we go up to the next level, which is shelter, what they call security. And so, I get my food, water, and I get my food, water, air. Now I need shelter. Okay, that's moving me up. Then the next rung is going to be, God, I always mix these two up. Self-esteem, and then followed by love, and then self-actualization. Sometimes I mix up the self-esteem and love. But what you were doing is you were looking at, man, if I had those bottom 2 rungs, if I had, the food, whatever, water, and the security, including like the clothing, I would be happy. And I'm going, no, 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 you wouldn't, because that's just the bottom rungs.
Yeah.
Next, you need to get to the part where you have good feelings about yourself, where you have people who love you. And then finally, self-actualization, which for Maslow meant finding a thing you were meant to do in this world and doing it.
Yeah.
And so that is a common myth that we see about people's beliefs is, if I just focus on, I think you're of the age that after Saturday morning cartoons, Sally Struthers would come on. Right?
Yeah.
Sally Struthers would it was usually Ethiopia. It was somewhere along the Horn of Africa or something. And she would go to Ethiopia, Somalia, Eritrea, and they had a drought and they had a famine. And, you'd see these kids and you'd look at them and you're eating your, drinking Ecto Cooler and eating Cheetos and going, man, those kids are just so bad off. I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful to live in America or wherever you live, or I'm just thankful not to be there. I should be happy. I go, let's not punish ourselves and go, well, if I just had food, water, and shelter, I'm happy. Because the reality is when we study people, I mean, that is, we need those to be happy, but that's not what pushes us to happiness. Happiness then comes from, that's the foundation we need, but then we also need love, and we also need self-esteem. We also need to be doing the things that we need to do in life to feel great about ourselves. So just focusing on what I have physically, that isn't going to help me necessarily achieve happiness emotionally, because it's also the emotional components. I need food, water, shelter, air, but that's not going to take me over the top. And so just focusing on how I'm so lucky to be at the bottom, to have the bottom two rungs of Maslow's hierarchy, it's not that helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? And the way I see that is, interpret that is, you ever see someone like, what city did you grow up in?
I'm afraid to tell you. There's so much stigma involved.
Orange County?
No, in LA. So
in LA. Okay.
I was born in Beverly Hills.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So much stigma. And then, we moved a little bit around there, moved to Brentwood, and then finally kind of put my roots down in Pacific Palisades. So rough, a rough go at it in life, right? I think people
I'm
say,
friends with Eddie Bravo and Joe Rogan. He talks about me all the time on the podcast, which is true.
Yeah, and I went to elementary school with Paris Hilton.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
And one of my good high school buddies, who I just saw recently, dated Kim Kardashian in junior high school. Another one of mine dated Paris and Nikki Richie. So yeah, I grew up in a little different world, but
okay, that environment, did you have anyone who tried to be a gang member or try to be street?
I don't care. Come at me, Sean Stewart, but I'm gonna put you on blast. Rod Stewart's son. I'm sorry.
Really?
Yeah. So, Rod Stewart's son,
He said, "Come at me, come at me, Sean."
Yeah, because he's kind of he's a media person. Yeah. So he had a gang. It was called Walking Time Bomb.
What?
Yeah. So
that sounds intimidating.
Yeah. So he went to elementary school at El Rodeo in Beverly Hills. So it's over there on Wilshire. And it's the nice part of Beverly Hills Elementary School. So there's El Rodeo, which is the.
And then you get down where it goes to rodeo when the street becomes rodeo.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, and then there's and then at the other end is Horace Mann, which is the not so nice of Beverly Hills, and then in between you have Hawthorne. So so he went to the rough school, or sorry, the good school, not the rough school. So he started a gang there, Walking Time Bomb, and then in high school he started to associate.
WTB. Yeah.
Started to associate with known gang members, actual real gang members, because these dudes were straight up just using him, right? He wanted to get into the lifestyle, and then hung out in certain places, and then suddenly met some gangsters, and then they see him driving. He was driving a new Land Rover that was all pimped out. And then he started rolling with dudes who had guns with them and stuff like that.
Yeah, you got some street cred.
Yeah. And they got, him buying them In and Out or whatever they got. I don't know what they got from it. But yeah, so yeah, I have a lot of experience with those types of dudes. Yeah, I got you with that one.
Yes. I'd expect that. It's so random.
But because I've seen people like that. There's a guy from where I went to high school, and his name was Joe. And I'll just leave his, just go first name. I don't want to, because actually, he actually was murdered. He actually ended up getting murdered. But 2 points is that, sorry, man, you made me choke on my own saliva. But one, I've learned from being around gangs is that you're a wannabe until you become one. Like it's not that far. You're mimicking it, and then the crossover is pretty easy if you can get accepted or do whatever it takes, to get in. But my point is that
Tupac, great example.
Oh yeah,
Kid went to art school, was like a backup dancer for Digital Underground.
That's the first. Sorry, go ahead.
Then kicks it with 8 Trays. And suddenly starts getting shot at and all that, and
Yeah, actually, my first concert I went to was Digital Underground, and he was a backup dancer.
Yeah,
that's how and it was such a small venue. It was Queen Latifah and Digital Underground, and there was some opening act. They didn't end up becoming big, so I don't remember who they were, but we were able to meet them afterwards. And he wasn't thug at all. He was a dancer. But going back, this guy Joe, who I knew, kind of adjacent. Well, I mean, I'd speak to him sometimes. We actually went to the same high school together, but he was kind of like Sean. What's his name? Stewart.
Sean Stewart. Yeah.
Sean Stewart. Where that he came from money, and I remember everyone thinking like, "You come from money, dude. What are you doing out on the streets? Why do you want to? You're hustling backwards. You're going us on the streets. We want what you have." But it goes back to what you're saying on the hierarchy of needs. Just because you have that doesn't mean you have a high self-worth or you have
love.
Yeah.
Oh no, I am sure. And by the way, I got jokes on Sean because he's an easy target. But the bigger issue for him is what was going on in his life, and I don't know him well enough. But what was going on in his life that kind of led him to feel like that type of chaos that gang life creates, and even wannabe gang chaos creates, that is more comfortable to him than just kicking it at the country club and eating club sandwiches and hanging out with girls named Miffy or something. So right, there's some disconnect. And so we look at you have money, you have whatever it is, and that's going to suddenly fill that void in your life, and it's not.
Yeah.
And so it's good to be grateful, right? Gratitude, an attitude of gratitude is fantastic. I am grateful that I was born where I was born, in the era that I was born in, and all these, medically speaking, I probably would have died if I lived in the 1800s and they just put leeches on you and amputated stuff, right? But and I'm thankful, but that isn't going to take me to happiness. It's the base of happiness. Yes. I need it it's an ingredient, but it's not the entire thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And bringing it full circle, the finish off the thought that I was saying was kind of formulating was that suicide, besides not doing it, I want to get that out there. I'm not condoning it in any way, form whatsoever. I think it's not good spiritually, and but the other thing about it is that I want to point out that, and I'm guilty of this myself, is I think it's important that people need to take some form of responsibility, even if you didn't ask for it, for the mental health of those that are close to you. You have to be careful of what you say to them, like in a fit of anger or in whatever it is. I think it's very important because, that old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but nails never hurt. I think words, I would have rather taken a baseball bat to the ribs than those words. Words are absolutely destructive. And I think that it's very important that we, if you got people that you love in your life, but you treat them bad or say things to them, or someone that you used to love, like say in a relationship and you're exiting that relationship, don't kick them when they're down. Don't do scorch earth. What's that called? Scorch earth?
Yeah.
Where you just like, screw you. And I'm going to be honest, I was guilty of that. There's a woman that I dated when I was in high school, and I was so damn mean to her. And the problem was, it wasn't her, it was me. I was damaged. I was out of my damn mind. And I did probably everything mean to her you can think of. No, I never hit her, but nothing violent, but just, psychologically mean, as a high school kid could do. I remember I was in my mid-30s, and I apologized to her via Facebook. And she wrote me back and goes, "Thank you. That means a lot to me. I've always wondered, like, did you even have a heart? And I was like, oh man, because I know that and I've even done it past that as an adult. So I'm just saying, it's a pledge that I've made with myself, especially since going to the hellhole that I went down through. It was humbling, but it made me realize that it's very we have to be very careful with how we treat other people, even if they've wronged us. If someone, has done something that makes us very upset, just be mindful, because sometimes those people, it's them. There's something wrong with them, and we shouldn't just verbally just beat the crap out of them, because you never know what they bring. I mean, what's luggage is in the back of their mind, and like I've learned, a psychological decline can happen rapidly. It's not over a year. Mine didn't happen over months. It was literally over days. So
Yeah, we see a lot of that. By the way, the if sticks and stones can hurt my bones, words will never hurt me. The inverse of that would be the idea that the only thing that could help me would be something physical, like receiving a gift. And we see that's not true. In fact, the most fulfilling parts of our life is when we hear words of affirmation from people.
yeah,
I love you. I care for you. Thank you so much. I had actually, before I got here, I was texting with somebody, and they were mentioning how I was a big mentor to them in their career, and those types of, and they've been appreciative of it. Those types of words are really more of the things that drive happiness.
yeah, yeah. It's especially from people who you really, really value. Like my sister and I, we have a very close relationship, but like she's the closest person I am to than anyone in the world. But we kind of grew up in a dysfunctional environment, so we rarely say "I love you" to each other, but we know that we love each other. So it's one of those. But if she gives me a compliment, which she actually does, like she's honest. I mean, besides the "I love you," the mushy stuff, we kind of avoid that. It seems weird, but we're working on it. But but like she'll go, "Hey, do you know what? You're pretty smart, and I want your opinion on something," or just anything. It just makes me. I feel like a little kid where the teacher goes, "Hey, good job. I'm gonna put a star next to your name on the board,"
Right.
and I'm just like, I'm riding high, man. I'm riding high off of that.
Yeah, it's the same in management. Is that when we look at studies of managing people, just giving them money has a very little effect. Like spot bonuses with people have very little effect on how they feel about their bosses and how they feel about their job. Whereas words of "great job, you're a valued member here." I know there's lots of memes about pizza parties at jobs and stuff, like making fun of them, that bosses use those. And I'm not advocating for pizza parties here, but is having meaningful conversations with people about the value they have at the company, and that you value their opinion on matters, is way more powerful for the morale and how they feel about their job than spot bonuses and payment structures.
Yeah, that makes sense. For some reason, you reminded me though. I have a friend of mine. He owns a construction company, and once a year he does this giant carnival for his first staff. I don't know how many employees he has. I'm thinking it's in the hundreds, and it. I'm worried about mentioning it because, well, he publicly posted about it, so it's fair game, right? So it's this construction company called Legacy Builders, right? And this dude throws a freaking like, imagine a festival that you would pay to go to. He throws it for his employees for free. There's horses, real horses to ride right there.
Yeah.
Ferris wheel, hot dog stands, every booth is free. Everything's free. Then you go look up at this stage area, dude. It looks like Let's Make a Deal. There's all like 20 freaking 80-inch flat screens. This year there's a real car, dude.
Wow.
Yeah, just giving away. And he's like telling people, it's because of you. Like he's letting them know this business doesn't exist without you. And he's letting everyone know this. Like here, he could actually have taken that and like bought a yacht, flossed in a Ferrari. He literally gave it all back. And I was just like, crap, man. I mean, this guy's so much like that all the time, 24/7. Sometimes I get used to it. But when I saw that, I was like, holy smoke, man. Like, but that's the right approach. You let people know that he didn't even just give them gifts. He's on the mic. You you mean a lot to me. Like
Yeah.
he's like, doing that. And he has very, very loyal employees.
Oh yeah. That is how you build your team.
Yeah, and they kill it. If he asks them to work overtime, there's no questions asked because he knows he wouldn't do it just to be a dick.
Right.
He's like, hey, we really need this for the company, and people volunteer.
And he doesn't objectify people like I can buy your time. Like if I just pay you enough.
Yeah, I own you. One of those.
Yeah, I've had one of those bosses before. I don't want them to sue me because they're also an attorney.
Oh yeah, we're in California. But I have a question. So, speaking of traumas and suicide, how does traumas play a role? One thing I've struggled with as an adult, and I'm actually better at it now, especially since my we'll call it the going to the dark side. Since I went to the dark side, it's like that kind of like cleansed me, kind of give me a hard reset. But I kind of struggled with kind of like hedonistic desires.
Yeah.
And does trauma play a role in that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. A lot of things play a role in hedonism. We have societal factors. You're going to have your individual psychological factors, how your brain is wired for rewards. And then, that trauma portion. So there's some, and I wouldn't do the science justice, but, there's a reason that people eat a lot, right? Eating is hedonism. Who am I to talk, by the way?
Wait, hold on a second. So hedonism isn't just sex.
No, so hedonism is a philosophy, and the philosophy's kind of been changed over the years, but it's the idea at its core is that the more pleasure you have, the more happiness you'll have. So if I can increase my pleasure in life, I'll increase my happiness. And we look back at the vomitoriums of ancient Greece and Rome. These were places where people stuffed themselves full of food and then would vomit so they could stuff themselves full of food again, right? The ultimate in gorging hedonistic tendencies. That's where this idea comes from. There were also orgies that were going on back then, right? And that was, if sex is good, more sex is better. If sex with one partner is good, sex with many partners is better. If eating one hamburger is good, eating 5 hamburgers, I don't think they had hamburgers back then yet, but whatever they ate, and in Greece, I don't know. I can't even imagine they had good food back then, but whatever they ate, they ate a lot of it. And so that now what it carries on in life, what it looks like is trying to avoid pain and trying to have as much pleasure in our lives. And, it falls completely flat, that entire, interestingly enough. So I talk about hedonism a lot. Interestingly enough, the guy I use as an example, Dan Bilzerian, if you guys know who he is, he's this Instagram influencer, gambling millionaire. I think his father was a millionaire as well. And he goes on Instagram, always has pictures with models on boats and is living that lifestyle. It's so funny because I always use him as the ultimate example of hedonism. He's always with a lot of these young women are ladies of the night, right? Sex workers is the term, but so he has them on yachts, and that's what his life is like. He even did an interview where he says, "I don't think I can get happy anymore. Nothing really excites me." So hedonism falls flat. There's a couple reasons. I don't know if you want me to go too deep into it.
Let's go. I need to listen. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's go to this idea. Okay. So if more pleasure equals happiness, then we should see, first of all, that rich people who can increase their pleasurable experiences in life are the happiest people on earth, but they are not. In fact, there are certain mental illnesses that impact them that do not impact other classes. Eating disorders first came up in upper middle class to upper class families, right? That doesn't exist it now does, but when it first came out, it was an affliction of generally like white upper middle class women.
Okay.
But so we're not seeing that rich people are very happy. That's not where happiness lies. So why is that? They're having so much pleasure. Why is it that a male porn star isn't the happiest man on earth? Right? He's having the most sex and he's getting paid to do it.
Good question.
Yeah. Actually, they are. So let's just end it right here. Everyone go be a male porn star.
Yeah, we take back everything we just said.
So there's a couple reasons. There's 3 main reasons. So the first one I want to get into is the idea of diminishing returns. It's a law that we see in business, and it actually comes out of business. It's the idea of, if you add more labor, at what point does input go up or output go up? Sorry, add more input, does output go up? But is there a certain point where output actually starts to, the amount of output per person you put in goes down to the point where it actually starts to hurt, right? If I had 2 people cleaning your house, it may be better than 1, right? 3 people might be better than 2. But if I put 40 people in your house to clean, they might get in each other's way. There might be processes where there's a downtime for some of them. Anyway, so diminishing returns came from that, but I'll make it simpler. We're going to talk about Oreos, which is a food of mine that I can't put down, right?
Oreos, that's crack. That's crack for kids.
It's vegan crack.
I know, dude. I could eat Rose. Rose as a kid.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
As an adult too.
As an adult, 3 days ago I could. So with that, if you were really hungry and I put a package of Oreos in front of you,
a little bit away. No, a little bit away.
A little bit away.
Yeah. No, just here. Go ahead. I got you like that.
And I gave you a package of Oreos, right?
Uh-huh.
You're starving. So I give you one and you eat the first one. I say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good is that Oreo? You're going to go, it was a 9, 9.2. Let's eat the next one. Maybe it's still a 9.2. Maybe it's a 9.1.
Yeah.
Next one, it's 8.9, right? And you know, I don't know if it's a straight line depreciation, but it's going to start going down.
Yeah.
Because you've had you know, the initial impact of the Oreo, which the first one was amazing. Now you're chasing that dragon, and it's actually going down. It's going down.
I've chased the Oreo dragon many times.
Oh, it's a dangerous dragon. Don't get me started on 600-pound life, because I can talk about that in this conversation. But so we have the Oreo. Our Oreo meter is going down. There's actually going to be a moment where it no longer brings you any pleasure to have the next Oreo. And very quickly after that, it's going to cause you pain. Whether it be, I have a stomach ache, toothache, nausea, you know, I'm feeling tired, feeling full, and all of that. So when we start to take pleasure over and over and over again through some of these more carnal desires like food and sex, we see that there's a diminishing return from each thing that we get, and that eventually it causes us pain. I ran drug treatment centers for a long time, I still do. This idea is that everyone's chasing the first high they got, maybe second high. Some people got sick their first high, but everyone's chasing that first time they got high. Usually it was around high school or so, and they had a really good time doing it. And then if they kept using and into maybe those transitional age years at 18 to 20, it was okay. And then it started to cause them problems. And then, you know, they actually don't enjoy it. They're just trying to quit and they can't.
Yeah.
So with any pleasure, we see that, right? You get a new video game, you play it at first, it's awesome, and you keep playing it, you're getting less and less pleasure from it.
So would that even apply to, say, like as of late, I've been evaluating even the relationships I've been in with women, for example. If there's an initial physical attraction and that's all you're really focused on, is that a diminished return? Like, well, does that still apply? Will that get, because in my case it is. It gets old. And I'm like, I spent all this time with you and you're not that bright. We don't have anything in common. Is that normal?
Well, do you use bad language on this show?
Yeah.
Okay, show me the hottest girl in the world. I'll show you a dude sick of fucking her. You ever heard that one?
Yeah. Well, I'm not trying to brag, but yeah, I've been there.
Yeah. So, it's absolutely normal. So if we want to watch,
I thought, what's wrong with me?
If we want to watch, otherwise, let's look at the pornography business. If that didn't happen, there'd be a very small pornography business. A guy would buy one pornography video and he would use it for the rest of his life. But when he gets tired of it, I'm
going to a redhead now.
Yes, and that's why with it, like pornography addiction is a great example of hedonism. Is we see exposure problems, meaning they've been exposed to so much of it that they now have difficulty taking joy from it. So they have to get more and more. It has to get weirder and weirder. And we actually see, oh,
Have you been looking through my searches?
I have.
Okay.
All right.
All
You
right.
need to get one of those life alert bands that says erase my internet history if I die.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, but the porn industry is a great study in hedonism and exposure, because when the pornography industry first started, we're looking at Hugh Hefner, and he had like pictures of topless women, one picture
Yeah.
in a magazine, and it was like, wow, and guys were like,
Whoa.
wow, this is
Yeah.
doing it for me. And then we got to films, and then we got to video. Video was a big one, but then once the internet hit, and then handheld devices, I mean, we're seeing a proliferation, and with OnlyFans now you have not only porn on demand, the type of porn you want on demand, right? So you can pay for a specific, whatever your kink is, you can pay for that.
It's like DoorDash of porn.
Yeah, it is. It's like the AI art makers, where you like just tell the AI, I want to see a sunset with a bird flying, and it just makes it for you. But we see that, and the reason that is because they no longer get the same joy from their first hit. The first time they saw a Playboy and it gave them a physiological reaction, that's gone away, right? Now, if they see Playboy, they're like, dude, that's nothing, right? I need to see two midgets, a giraffe, in
a cup.
Yes, two midgets, giraffe, and a cup. Those poor girls couldn't afford 2 cups. So, with that, yeah, what you're explaining is I was with a beautiful woman, and she no longer, appeared beautiful. That happened. That's exposure. So how do we see love grow? Well, if we're using the hedonistic idea of making love grow through just somebody being good looking, that's going to go off a cliff. But if we see love grow through, we're helping each other. This is my partner in life. They're my thought partner. They're my emotional partner. They've been there from, when I look at all the things my wife has been through with me, that makes me love her. She's been with me through the, loss of my mother, through our difficulties having children, through raising our children, through my daughter vomiting in her mouth, all of those things, right? So if we look at what true love really is, I mean, that's where it's at. It's not how they look. My wife is beautiful, but just if I depended on her good looks to get me through to this point, it would have gone away, and then I would have seen a new girl and gone, oh, that one's going to take me away, right? And take my feelings away. So, kind of long story short, the first reason hedonism fails is diminishing returns. Whether it's the beauty of a woman, every time you see her, the impact her beauty has on you decreases. Whether it's an Oreo that you eat, whether it's drugs you use, whether it's buying things, the car collections are a great example. Mm-hmm. People begin to buy cars because buying a car gives you a huge rush, right? And then I need to get another one. But, you stop feeling good when you have an 85 car collection. Maybe they'll sit and collect dust because you don't even care anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. There's actually some classic cars back here collecting dust. I'll show you after.
That's what I was referencing.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. You should check them out. They're pretty slick, but yes.
It wouldn't happen to me, though. I'd never get tired of them. Get me a hot girl. I'd never get tired of her.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
That's called terminal uniqueness. Terminal uniqueness is the idea that I am so different that whatever happens to other people wouldn't actually happen to me. Like lottery winners, right? If I won the lottery, they're prone to depression, suicide, all kinds of things. I think, well, if I won the lottery, that wouldn't happen to me. I'm so different. I'm like, okay, everyone thinks they're different, but it's not necessarily true. Pretty much as humans, we're very similar.
How does like the hedonistic hedonism and addiction, is that the same thing?
Very much so. Very much so. Addiction is literally the attempt. When you talk to people and what is at the core of addiction, I think it would be oversimplification to say it's one thing, but it definitely is, I want to feel better. I'm in pain. Whether the pain is now withdrawals, it's emotional pain from growing up, or trauma or physical pain from being in an accident. Addiction is the idea that I want to get away from pain and get toward pleasure. Here is a quick fix to do that. However, again, the heroin stops making you happy. The donuts stop making you happy, all those sorts of things. Which, it's funny, I mentioned Oreos, but we were talking about the reasons hedonism falls flat, right?
Yeah.
The second reason has to do with how fleeting happiness and pleasure can be. So what's the best meal that you've ever eaten in your life? And if you can't narrow it down to one, maybe think of, a top 10 meal you can tell me about that you had, a great experience you had.
Probably it's actually margarita pizza, but I used to live in Italy. But there's a place. This is not a paid ad. Tony's Pizza Napolitano in San Francisco. They can make it exactly like they do in Naples, Italy, and they're the only pizza place outside of the country of Italy certified as authentic Italian pizza. The guys won the world championship of pizza making multiple times. So that pizza there, it's the best.
When you crossed over to the dark side,
Yeah.
did the fact that you've had that pizza 2 years ago, 1 year ago, whenever, did that even cross your mind? Like, man, I'm depressed, but I do remember I had that piece of pizza. And that really brought me a lot of happiness back then.
No, not at all. That was, I've only thought about it because you asked me.
Yeah. Right. And so what we see is that once, whatever that act is that gave us pleasure, once it's done, the impact it has on us also diminishes very quickly. Right. I ate the meal, as I'm taking each bite, it's great. And I'm sitting there and I'm enjoying digesting it, maybe, and if I ate too much, maybe not. But, and then maybe, as I go to sleep and then I wake up and I can, have some leftovers and whatever. As all of that happens, we get further and further away from the moment, and it gives us less and less pleasure. So that whole mechanism of, well, this pleasure is going to bring me happiness, you would have to have pleasure every second of your life for you to have happiness. Otherwise, once it's done, it loses its power. And as we know, pleasure is also fleeting. So there's going to be an upward mark that you hit that you can't pass anymore. Okay, I've had, orgy with 100 women. Now I need to have an orgy with 101. I mean,
Have you been looking through my window, my
Yes.
house? Okay.
Yeah, I know. And I don't know how you fit it's like a clown car in there getting all those girls.
It
in.
is literally. Yeah, it's a clown car. Yeah.
Yeah. So we look at this idea of, okay, these experiences are what are going to bring me happiness. And I go, no, those experiences definitely bring you joy in that moment, but they're not going to bring you long-term happiness, because once they're done, they really have a low level of impact. The best meal I had, I got a hot hand in a game of dice. I was in Vegas playing craps and won a bunch of money. And so I said to my wife, who wasn't my wife at the time, let's spend this money. So we went to Nobu there and had the highest tier tasters menu, where they bring out all the exotic stuff and all that. Now, when I was having difficulties in my life, when my mom passed, did I wake up at any time and go, it really sucks. I love my mom. I miss her terribly. It takes the edge off, as I did have, a crunchy wrap roll at Nobu in 2011.
Yeah, that's well. How does hedonism or addiction? I know how it works with drugs. There's a chemical reaction, but let's say a behavior hedonism, or either one. How does it get such deep roots into someone, like a grip like that?
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons. Society is a huge reason. All day we're advertised to, and you can't say that doesn't have an impact on you. We're advertised that if you do this thing, if you go on this vacation, by the way, advertising doesn't stop at paid advertisements. It also, people's Instagrams and whatever they're advertising, right, by showing their lifestyle and acting happy. All of those things lead us to the belief that pleasure is happiness. It's hard to separate ourselves from that, because when we look at it, our brains are hardwired for that, right? We're
Yeah.
we're hardwired to eat good food, right? Fatty food tastes better than celery. We're hardwired to have sex with men are, right, with many partners because we need to spread our seed to get our DNA out there in the world. And so how does it get a hold and why does it keep hold? Sociologically and physiologically, we have pressures. And we also consistently tell ourselves that it's going to be the next thing. So that's like the kind of the third one, the hedonic treadmill. But before I get to that, and that question, it's a good question. I want to go over the third reason it fails, and then it'll lead into that. So this is a thought experiment I always tell people when discussing hedonism. So I want you to imagine it's very much a room like this, right? Where, you don't have, say, windows, except let's take away the door. There's no door here. And I
Yeah.
could drop you in here. And instead of this being a table, let's say it's a piano keyboard. And each note on the keyboard you hit will then, through a wire that goes to your brain, will then stimulate and simulate the feeling of a great event, a hedonistic pleasure. So let's say I push this button and it makes me believe that I'm eating the best meal I've ever had. I'm back at Nobu eating, my crunchy roll. That's not what I ordered, but sure, boom. And then I hit this button. It's like the best sex I ever had. And I hit this button and it's like the best drunk feeling I've ever had. This is the feeling of the best sleep I've ever had. And all of those very visceral feelings, right? So you could be in that room, right, with this keyboard for the rest of your life. But the caveat is you could never leave. So this is the thought experiment. Would you stay in the room with this keyboard that you can control your feelings, but you could never leave?
Wait, what? As opposed to what? I have an option to. I have.
No keyboard. You'll never get the keyboard. You won't get to play it
So
ever.
either way, I'm going to be in this room.
No, you won't be in this room. You could leave the room.
But if I use the keyboard,
But
I
if
got
you
to
use
stay.
the keyboard, you could never leave this room again.
I'm leaving the room.
Why?
I'm an extrovert. I miss my family. I would miss people.
Yes. So the social aspect of life is also a reason that hedonism falls flat. That is the answer that most people give, is if you get a couple of people who will say, yeah, I'd like to stay in that room. But I've done this with thousands of people, this thought experiment. And, you'll have people say, I want to see my kids grow up. I want to be there for my parents. I want to see my partner. I want to be with my siblings. I have my friends. And there's no amount of feelings that would make me, that could stimulate me to the point of forgetting that. So hedonism is also a very selfish endeavor. And that's also why it fails, because humans are social creatures. We're not like lions are in prides, but there's certain cats that just, once they're born, after they're a little bit old enough, they just go patrol their own area.
Like a tiger.
Yeah, and they never hang out with, you don't see them kicking it with other tigers
Or
and
a
stuff
cheetah.
like that. Yeah, is they just have their area, and they're meant to be alone. We aren't not like that. We're community creatures. And hedonism, the pursuit of pleasure, ends up being an asocial activity. And the example I will give is drug use. At first, drug use starts out as social. Right? So I always use the heroin user because that is kind of the pinnacle of drug use, meaning not what you should aspire to, but it's where like the absolute, kind of worst place you can get.
Yeah.
Hardest.
Well, meth is kind of catching up with it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just not in fashion as much on the East Coast, but heroin is West Coast and East Coast.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. They still have crack on the East Coast, so they come out here for drug treatment. They're like, "You guys are doing meth out here," and they're like, "We just do crack over here." There's a whole funny thing. On the East Coast, there's like we get the powdered white. You guys get this crappy tar stuff from Mexico. I don't want to use your heroin here, but So with the
bougie, man.
Oh, yeah. I would get lots of dietary requests too. Like some people will shoot up with their own urine or toilet water because they have no water, no liquid to cook with. But then if I try and give them like French fries, they go, I don't eat fried food. But
Is this kosher?
yes, exactly. Yeah, it's cruelty free. But what happens with them? They start using, right? Usually they start with oxys. I mean, occasionally you'll get somebody who starts IV using, but they start with oxys. Someone's grandma died and they snatched all the pills, or their parents have a pain problem, whatever. And they're doing it at parties with people.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually it graduates, like they meet somebody who teaches them how to IV use.
So they just hit that key on the piano.
Yep.
Okay.
And now, and by the way, that key, those oxys, they're taking 1, then they're taking 2, then they're taking 3, because again, they're getting diminishing returns.
Got it.
Right. And them getting high 3 days ago doesn't make them feel better today. Right. So the fleeting effect, you're only happy when you're high. After you're high, you don't get to look back at your high and go, I got high.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they then graduate on to IV usage. And once they move into IV usage, usually they lose their jobs, they lose school, they lose their sober friends. People, sober people don't like to be around people who are IV drug using. And they end up in hotel rooms alone, in a tent, homeless. It ends up being very asocial because they are so focused on how am I going to get my drug that they don't have the ability to socialize with other people.
Do you know what's interesting? That also, it appears to be very similar to like my 600-pound life. As they go out of control with the eating, they can't go out and socialize anymore. It's usually them and maybe a caregiver who should be arrested for.
It's always a caregiver.
Yeah, to overfeed them.
Yeah, that's there's 2 parts to that, which when you talk about trauma, is with the caregiver themselves has a vested interest in the person staying big, because they are terrified that if this person gets skinny, they will leave them. So that's why when you watch,
I've seen that in relationships. I'm not kidding.
Oh yeah,
I've seen people intentionally try to get their significant other overweight or maintain them unhealthy, which doesn't make sense.
right.
Okay, now it does.
Right, you would see. I remember watching an episode, and a guy snuck like candy bars into his wife or girlfriend when she was in the hospital after her surgery, and they were doing that 600 calorie diet, right? 600, something like that. And they were sneaking candy bars, and they're going. The doctor comes in, and goes, "How are you gaining weight in here? You had the surgery, and you're having 600 calories." And then the partner's like, "Oh, I was bringing her donuts, or I was bringing her candy bars." And you go, "What is this guy doing?" And the reality is he's afraid she's going to leave. She's going to get skinny. Other guys are going to look at her. It's called mate guarding is a term, right? And so
Maybe that's the move.
Yeah, it is. And then they can't leave their room. So that's part of it. And then with the people who get big, who get to 600 pounds, they've lost a lot of they're hedonistic in eating whatever it is that gets them there, but they've lost a lot of the joy that comes from it. In fact, they get, end up in their room, and they're doing it sometimes as a protectionary measure. If I get big enough, nobody will get close to me. And if nobody gets close to me, nobody can hurt me. So they call that an insulation theory. I'm literally insulating myself from other people getting close to me. I make myself so unappealing. And we see this with victims of sexual abuse. So, in working with children, sometimes I would get a parent who'd come in and they'd go, yeah, my kid's 9 and they just started wetting the bed again. And it was so weird. And I knew what was going on in my head immediately. Let's just say this. I had to send them to the doctor first. I want to make sure. Sometimes there's some muscular development issues that lead to bedwetting and not being able to control your bladder. So infection and the like. So we've got to rule that out. Once they come back and they say, yeah, the doctor looked, did a whole thing, no UTI. They said everything looks good. And then the next question I'd have for them is, who just moved into your house? Actually, my cousin just came and he's been staying with us for the last 2 months. So then I'll meet with the kid. Sometimes you have to develop rapport, tell me about the cousin. They kind of go silent. And then I know, okay, the cousin is doing something to this kid, and the kid is wetting the bed, maybe out of fear or out of trying to become a bad target. I want to insulate myself. If I wet myself, maybe this person won't touch me.
That's sad, man.
Right. So that is, with my 600-pound life and with, these kids who end up, they stop taking care of themselves. Like we'll see in what we call daily living skills. They'll we'll see them come off a cliff. Their hair's disheveled. They smell. They're putting on clothes that, don't match, and too much clothing in the heat. And we go, okay, well, they're trying to insulate themselves. Yeah, it is sad. It's very sad. And we always have to, if we're going to talk about child advocacy, we always have to be careful about who we let take care of our kids. We, in the 80s, were always taught that like molestation, rape, those things happen. Strangers jump out of bushes, guys with
Candy.
Candy vans are coming around. And it's no, statistically, no, it's not how it works.
It's the one that's close to you.
Yep. It's the one who has access to you.
Yeah.
And it's the one you can manipulate.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting you bring this up. I was at the driving in from LA yesterday, and I stopped by GB Irvine, and I was sitting on the bench, just talking to some guys. They were rolling, some guys like, I need a break in between rounds, so I'm sitting here talking.
Weak.
Well, I wasn't rolling. I was just passing through.
Yeah.
And they were like, so I'm not weak, by the way.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm pointing that out.
No.
Not me.
No, you just came from a cold plunge.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, exactly.
I got issues with cold plunges.
I have a friend that sends me video of him cold plunging and telling me, "Get some." You didn't know, but I was like, "Dude, all right, I'll get there."
So you're sitting there at GB.
Oh yeah, so I'm sitting there at GB, and we actually were talking about dating and just how things go sideways or marriages, and by the time we get to our age, we see a lot of disasters and a lot of success stories, right? There's a little bit of everything. And one guy was like, there's this one guy was sitting next to me. He's like, what the key to it is you got to find a woman that's not damaged. And I was like, what woman? I know statistically a long time ago, and I don't even know if everyone was reporting, but it was like 25% of women were abused.
Yeah.
But it definitely has to be higher than that. Like when I worked as a high school teacher, it was very common, not by the teachers, but something happened to that kid at home. And I told him, I was like, I don't know, dude. I would say it's a pretty high percentage. I think the task in that, the hard part of that would be finding someone who hasn't been damaged or abused, right?
Yeah. Well, if we look at, I'm not trying to objectify women here, but if we looked at them like using our car thing, because cars are on my mind, can you find a car with 200,000 miles that hasn't been in an accident or had a part break on it? No. Well, by the time you get to be 35 or 40, 45, women, and it doesn't have to be sexual abuse, but they've probably had their fair share of contact with terrible dudes out there, right?
Yeah.
And us being some of those terrible dudes at some stage in their life, maybe even, right, when we were in our teens or early 20s.
30s.
So,
40s.
30s, 40s, last week. So, I think it's an unrealistic standard. It's not, can I find someone who's not damaged? It's, can I find somebody who is damaged, who's managed to deal with that damage in a healthy way and not let it impact their outlook on life, men, or whatever it may be that, is drawing the chasm or the rift between you and them.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, because I was thinking that's a tall task to try to figure out, like find someone who's not damaged,
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that, I've been through therapy to a good portion of my life, adult life, and then I've returned back to the well.
Yeah.
And one thing I know from that is once you start learning about mental health or traumas and all the things that you're discussing, you can actually identify it in people sometimes when you're talking to them. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not that you're a mind reader, but there's just certain things that kind of come off across in their behavior or things that they apologize for, and I just find that very interesting. And one thing I find intriguing is that I find it intriguing that people of, let's say, over 35 and up, a lot of them, they know that they have traumas or damage and they don't want to get help because they're scared to face it, which is, if you think about it, that's crazy.
Or they don't believe anyone can help.
Or not believe anyone can help. So, and I think there's a lot of people like that,
Yeah, a good proportion of people in the world and now are walking around with some sort of damage that's been done to them that's impacted their outlook. And, present company included in that, right? Just because I sit on one side of the room during therapy doesn't mean I haven't sat on the couch or had bad things happen to me, right?
Yeah, yeah. I just find that intriguing because when we were younger, this is just I always pronounce this word wrong.
Anecdotal, yeah,
Anecdotal,
sure.
anecdotal. When we were in high school, I don't know if it's because we're naive and we can't identify what we are seeing in our friends, or we're just good at hiding it. But it didn't seem like anybody. You had to have a real, real bad problem for it to stand out. You know, like I couldn't even. Some of my friends looking back, like he had to have been in special ed. Like nothing against special ed, but you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like. But when we're older, it's almost like they can't hide it anymore. It's like it's just it's worn on their sleeves. They can't even hide it. Like the triggers, the whatever it is with them, it's just
I got a vitriolic email from an employee today, right? I asked them to do a task. They didn't like the idea that I was, by the way, I'm not asking. I run the place. You do it. But
yeah.
I ask to be nice. I'm asking to do a task. They didn't like the task, and they, just go off on this tangent and personal insults against me. And I look at that, and obviously my first gut reaction is F you, right? Who do you think you're talking to? But that's not.
Do you know who I am?
Yeah. Do you know who I am? Like I could armbar you so quick. You don't even know
Yeah.
jujitsu.
Well, you know Eddie Bravo?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. So, do you know Sean Stewart? So that was my first reaction. Then my next reaction to it was like, what's happened here to this person that their fight or flight, and so they go into fight mode, their fight gets triggered by something as simple as asking you to do something that's part of your job description that you have time for in your schedule. And that turns into like you've had either a series of bad managers that you could never trust. You've had a series of bad parents, series of bad partners. It's highly speculatory on my end, but just that your fight or flight hypervigilance is that strong, that tells me something.
yeah, and you're risking your livelihood off an email request.
Yeah, in writing. Yeah, there's a term, career suicide via management. You know how there's like suicide by cop? Yeah, career suicide via management, where people get so fed up, they do something to put the manager in a corner where the manager has to go, I have to fire you. Right? I'm not saying in this case.
Yeah.
But I've had a lot of employees do that, where it's career management or career suicide by management.
That makes sense. I get that now. As a small business owner, I've owned businesses where I think the most employees I've had were like 16 at a time regularly during the holiday season. It got up to like almost 30, but off the regular 16 crew, I remember thinking like, what? Because I didn't know this death by what's it called?
Career suicide via management.
Via management. Yeah, I didn't know that, but now looking back, I'm like, that's what that was. Because I was thinking like, what the hell is wrong with you? Why are you never behaved this way before? Now you have all these issues. You're angry. You're doing all this stuff. And okay,
I fight
they're on the way out.
So nothing to brag about. And I actually smiled a little bit when I said it. So I need to watch myself. I have fired hundreds of people, unfortunately. There's a difference between firing and laying off, right? Firing is you did something as the employee that I can no longer manage, either through disciplinary action, a discussion, whatever. You're too dangerous to have here. Laying off that's not your fault. We mismanaged the company. Layoffs are management's fault.
Yeah.
And so I fired, and people go, oh man, like, especially new managers. I was having a discussion with a manager yesterday, and she has about 60 people under her purview. And I was talking about a firing issue, and she's like, well, I've only fired one person, and it makes me nervous. And I go, why? And I didn't do it to be provocative, but I explained to her, I said, there's two reasons you fire someone. One is they really want to do the job. Like, I really want to be a car detailer, but they just don't have the skills. Yeah. They have that. I really want to do great. And they get out there early and they do it, but they just suck.
Yeah.
Right. And then you have the people who have the skills and stop wanting to do it. Right. My heart breaks for the people who want it and don't have the skills. By the way, that's your fault for hiring that person. How did you not see that they didn't have the skills? But For most people, for 99% of the public, the reason I'm firing you is you have the skills to do it. You've stopped wanting to do it. Why have you stopped wanting? Whatever it is, you've stopped taking enjoyment in the job. Maybe on my end, I have made it's a toxic work environment. It could be my fault. Right?
Yeah.
However, you want to go. So you've stopped doing your job, or you've become insubordinate, or you've, whatever it may be, negligent, and you want to part ways. You just don't have the courage. And so I'm going to, kind of
help you
give
out.
you the opportunity here. And I'm not an asshole, and I never say this is a great opportunity for you. I always say, like, your skills no longer meet the needs of this company, and for that reason, we're going to part ways, so I don't get sued, right?
Yeah.
That's always how I do it. But for those people, I look at it as I'm bridging a gap for you. So when I go, this person could do their job and they're choosing not to for a lot of reasons. Let's take people who got sick out of the mix, because they then go into I can't do it, even though I want to do it. But the ones who just, slacking off, showing up late, smoking weed in the bathroom, you don't want to be here, man. It's obvious.
Yeah.
So let's just, be adults about this. You head your way, I'll head my way. No hard feelings, man. Maybe in 10 years, you'll look back and go, I should have liked that job. Or, my boss was a jerk. Brent's an asshole. That's fine. But let's just part ways. I don't need to look at it as a bad thing necessarily. It's going to be bad for them. I'm not an idiot, right? Like, I've lost my job before. It hurts in the opening, but then afterwards you find another job or whatever. You move on in life. You reassess your life.
Going back to hedonism, for some reason that popped back in my head, hedonism, if someone finds themselves in the depths of addiction, how do you pull up and get out of it? How do you...
If I could solve this one problem, I would be a multimillionaire. But I'll give you some tools.
Yeah, what are some tools that people can do? Because I know a lot of people that are addicted to all kinds of crap, man. And it doesn't even have to be hard drugs. I have a friend that's trying to quit smoking.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like...
Oh, smoking cessation is almost impossible. I mean, people who do it, I just applaud them. Quitting smoking, the easiest way to quit smoking is to never start. After that, man, it is rough. It alters your cells. I mean, the withdrawal
It ages
syndrome.
people too, right?
Oh yeah, there's specific, when you look at the way their skin hangs. Like, I can look at older women and men who've smoked, and their skin just kind of like hangs a little different. No, it affects the elasticity of your skin as you age.
Oh my goodness.
Those chest lines, women can get right in there as they age.
I think that's sexy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you better hang out at some smoke shops.
Yeah.
You'll meet some women there buying cartons.
Yeah, we can't say bowling alleys anymore out in California.
Yeah.
No one smokes anywhere.
You're right. Yeah, and bowling alleys used to have the thing. So how do I defeat hedonism? Well,
Or the initial steps.
right.
Yeah.
The first part about it is going to be seeing it for what it is. I forgot to mention the hedonic treadmill.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's going to be a part of this too, is stepping off the hedonic treadmill. That's going to be part of it. The hedonic treadmill is that I grab something, right? I go, man, if I just get that job, I'm going to be happy. You get the job, and for a little bit you're happy, and then it goes down again, and you're sad. I know I got the job, but now if I just buy that house, I'm going to be happy. Get happy. It goes back down again. Man, if I just get that girl, if I just get that car, if I just take that vacation, and we keep going to the next thing, the next pleasure is what's going to bring us happy. We have to jump off of that. And we have to find, so if we're going to stay with Maslow's hierarchy of needs today, we have to find self-actualization. What is it that I was meant to do on this earth? And that's different for everyone, right? Maybe for you, it could be this podcast is what you're meant to do on this earth, right? For me, I've tried a lot of things in my life, and I've realized kind of two things. One of the things that I'm meant to do on this earth is jiu-jitsu.
Ditto.
So I teach it and I train it, and it's a very integral part of my life. The other thing is management of mental health facilities. I find a great satisfaction in knowing that I'm helping a broad array of people, right? If you're one therapist, you help one person and the people who love them. If you oversee 50 therapists, 10 psychiatrists, 10 nurses, suddenly you have to look at your broad impact. And if I know I can manage people better than another manager so that everyone there is seeing more people, is better, more effective at their job, wow, I'm really having a big impact. So you have to find whatever it is for you. And then you go after that thing. Now that's dangerous too, because what if you say, my thing is eating sleeves of Oreos. So so what we want to look at is not only is it what I've meant to do, but is it a skill that as I do it longer, I derive more enjoyment? So I like to use the guitar as an example because almost everybody had a guitar phase in their life. Did you play the guitar ever?
No comment.
Yep.
I went through a few phases, got
Yeah.
rid of it, then went right back to it like a few years again. But I played musical instruments growing up, but that's no excuse. Yes, I went through a guitar phase and fantasized about rocking out and impressing people.
Yeah. So when you first picked up the guitar, you sucked, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not
Not
all,
in my mind, but reality, yes.
we're not all Stevie Ray Vaughan. So we pick up the guitar and we're like, our fingers are in the wrong place on the fretboard. It's making, twangy sounds. We don't even know what a chord is. And it's not really that fulfilling. Maybe we learn, what's that Nirvana song? Dum 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 dum. Come As You Are.
Yeah.
There you go. Maybe we learned Come As You Are the first time. That's a good starter song, right? And we put the guitar down. We go, man, that thing's frustrating. That thing kind of sucks. But I'll stick with it because at a party one day I'll learn how to play Wonderwall and I'll impress all the girls. So then we pick it up the next time and maybe we learned a better song and a more intricate song. And each time we pick it up, we're doing a more and more difficult thing with it, but it ends up bringing us more joy. And by the time we can play a complex piece, within rock and roll, I don't know, if we can play like a Jimi Hendrix solo or something, then we get true and enjoyment from it. And the enjoyment isn't just from doing it, but it's the self-esteem, right? We talked about self-esteem as part of the hierarchy, that from knowing that I've worked hard at something, I have been disciplined and stayed with it, and it has made me good, and it brings me enjoyment, and music brings other people enjoyment. So we have to find not only a thing where it's something we're meant to do. I could say I'm meant to eat donuts because I love to eat donuts, but it's not a skill set, really. A baby can eat a donut.
In college, I've gained 30 pounds in between September and December one time. Just eating like a savage, dude.
Yeah. One of my donuts are on my mind. In my reception area, we have some security guards, and one of them has like a donut tattooed on them and always has donut day. So I'm like, yesterday was donut day, and they're like, oh, do you want a cruller or whatever? So we got to find that thing, and it has to be difficult, and it has to take discipline, and it has to make us feel good about ourselves at the end. Eating donuts doesn't make us feel good about ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's one of the ways we stay out of it. But it's not the only way, because we do see musicians who are addicts, right? So they're, Jimi Hendrix, the 27 Club or whatever, where everyone dies in music. Who's 27. So then, that part is one part of it. The other part then, why do some people become rockers, is hedonism. So trying to avoid those activities that give us those short bursts of happiness. I teach a jiu-jitsu class at 6:20 a.m. and it's not actually a class. I do a warm-up and then we just spar. Sparring's exhausting. At 6:20 a.m., it's really exhausting. It's hard to get up at that time. Nobody ever leaves that class and regrets coming. Because it's hard work.
Yeah.
I tell you, plenty of people have regretted eating a big meal, which is very easy work, watching pornography. In fact, it's such a joke. By the way, I treat sex addiction, so I'll make jokes about pornography because, that drug addiction and sex addiction go hand in hand often with any kind of stimulants, especially. What is the first thing somebody does after they've completed the act of masturbating is they close the laptop or they shut it off, because if they hear it, they get grossed out and they feel guilty and they feel, just skeevy.
I'll take your word for it. I've never experienced it. No, I don't do things like
you have
that.
zero refractory period, but that doesn't actually bring me pleasure when I finish it. After it's done, I have shame.
Yeah.
After I'm done with jiu-jitsu, I feel pride. I got through that. There've been some days, especially in the summer, when the air conditioning's broken, and I literally am in there, and in my mind, I'm going, I'm going to fucking die here.
Yeah.
I'm going to fucking die.
Why do I do this?
Yeah.
You ever ask yourself that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so then, but then I make it through. I don't die. And I go, damn.
Fortunately.
Yeah, I made it through. I did that thing. And I got better. and I hit this move on this guy that was really hard, and I never could have imagined doing that. And it made me feel like I completed something, and it made me feel proud of something. So we've got to find those things. We've got to avoid the hedonistic. So when I was talking about waking up at 6:20, that's hard. You know what's easy? Staying up all night, playing video games, eating pizza, watching movies. That's easy.
Yeah.
But at the end, when you wake up in the morning at 10 a.m., you don't feel good about yourself for having done it. But if you woke up in the morning at 6, I'm assuming you didn't do all that stuff, and you go train jiu-jitsu in the morning, or you go, whatever your thing is, you go on a hike, you go, afterward, you go, I'm proud of myself. I'm glad I did that. That contributed to me feeling not only good in the moment, but better about myself as a human being. And we have to fill our lives with more of those activities that are hard, that are also, we can increase our knowledge and our skill set in, and that make us feel proud of ourselves. Not these very short bursts of,
Dopamine hits.
Yeah, Tom and Jerry's, Ben and Jerry's, or whatever it may be. That's an easy answer. How do I step away from addiction? There's much harder answers, which will go into yours, which is trauma, right? What am I running away from? How do I face it so that I don't feel I need to have pleasure? My silent times, when the TV's off, when the lights go out, when it's time for me to go to bed and all of my bad thoughts come in, I can face those bad thoughts rather than have to run away from them and turn the TV on, the fan on, play on my phone, all that, because trauma's happened to me. I need to face some of that. So that's a big part of it. Then there's the social aspect. There's everyone in addiction loves to talk about this documentary, Rat Park, and I go, well, that's oversimplification. But Rat Park is, this study of rats and which ones use drugs. And the whole idea is that if you're social, you're not going to use drugs. But that kind of falls flat on its face when we look at, again, rock stars, highly social, hanging out, having social interactions with all types of people. And yet here
Or
they
just
are.
Los Angeles entertainment industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very social environment.
Right. And I'm not saying social isn't an important part, but so Rat Park is correct. But again, oversimplification. Are we ascribing one answer as the answer when it's probably a multitude of answers? And so that's why, I'm giving you a couple different answers because I don't want to oversimplify it. Anyone who oversimplifies addiction or happiness in life hasn't studied it enough.
But would you agree that it starts with, not to sound like, I've never been to a rehabilitation center or anything, but acknowledging to yourself that I have a problem?
Yeah. We're looking at like a 12-step model, right?
Yeah, but is that a universal truth? Like, I need to look in the mirror and go, do you know what? Like, I'm choking, I'm beating off too much, or I'm eating, I'm necking a sleeve of Oreos, while watching 13 Reasons Why. Like, I'm just destroying myself. You have to acknowledge that first, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You got to acknowledge you've got to acknowledge it because you have to know that there's a problem to be able to solve a problem. If you don't see it as a problem, then how do you know to solve it? And so, and we have to take a moral inventory of ourselves as well. Like, what has this problem done not only to me, but to other people?
Yeah.
Eating Oreos may not feel like it hurts other people, but if you don't live as long and you leave your kids behind at 60 instead of 85, those Oreos have had an impact on you.
Would you agree that hedonism, in all forms, it leads to destruction? Like it's all paths lead there.
So on the one end we have hedonism, which is the absolute pursuit of pleasure. On the other, we have what's called asceticism, which is kind of that monk who lives in a cave with only a bowl of rice for 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't want, the answer isn't always in the middle. But in this case, hedonism is bad when taken to extremes. That doesn't mean I don't enjoy going on a vacation. I don't enjoy having cookies. I don't enjoy. But if it crosses, when we go back to that idea of our diminishing returns, I need to make sure I'm not going over that cliff.
Yeah.
With whatever it is that I'm using. And so asceticism, like I'm going to live with one pair of pants, one shirt in a van.
Tom's shoes
because they give a pair to the kids. But I've yet to see pictures of kids wearing Tom's shoes in poorest country. But I'm not indicting them. I'm sure they do.
But at the price, you're basically, it's baked into the other shoes. Are baked in there.
So,
but I mean, but with hedonism, I don't mean like sometimes having pleasure, but when you realize like this is important, like if you find yourself at work thinking, I can't wait to get home and eat,
Yeah.
I can't wait to just, I watched my 600-pound, no, I think it was my 600-pound life. It might have been, are there spinoffs?
There's my 1,000-pound, or there's like 1,000-pound sisters.
That one.
Yeah.
That one. Because I remember these women were ordering, what's it called when you get a whole sheet, is it a sheet of cake?
Sure.
Like for a party, like
Yeah,
from
I know
Costco?
what you're talking about, like those Costco ones. Yeah.
Yeah, they're getting one for each. And they're like, well, hey, don't, girl, this is mine. If you want that, you gotta get your. And so when you're at that level, or not even that level, when you're en route, let's say you're at half a sheet or getting there, you're on the road to destruction, right? Like you're. I'm not talking.
I don't know how they don't go into diabetic ketoacidosis, right? And they just
it's like jiu-jitsu, dude. They're like, you know what? I'm up for this challenge, and it's like a jiu-jitsu training class with no AC.
Yeah, I mean,
you're like, oh, I'm glad I made it through this.
They've got like those women have the strong. I don't know if they're both alive still, but have the strongest like hearts and pancreae that ever. Because I think most of us, if we ate a sheet of cake, we would die.
Yeah, dude. Do you remember that old cooking show in the 90s called Two Fat Women?
No.
I think it was called Two Fat Women. It was a British cooking show, but it started airing on the Food Network. And, dude, when they would cook, they would, like, have a filet mignon, wrap it in bacon, cook it in oil and all this stuff. One died of a heart attack.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're like, well. So, but not just having pleasure sometimes. But, I mean, when it becomes beyond the range of normal, or
Okay, so there's actually ways we measure this, because people will come in and say, I don't have an addiction problem, right? That's always I drink, sure, but I don't have an addiction problem. But there's ways we can judge: is it impacting your life? One, are you doing this in the face of physical problems? Meaning, are you drinking so much you're causing damage to your liver? Do you now have diabetes? Have you hurt yourself drinking, right? People fall down the stairs. So we look, are you having physical consequences and still doing it? Are you having social consequences? You made an ass of yourself at a party, and now people won't talk to you. Your girlfriend left you because they don't want to be with somebody who's a drunk. Are you having trouble trying to cut down on it? You simply can't. You keep saying, I'm going to go sober for a month or whatever, and 18 days in, let me have one drink. Are you building tolerance, right? I used to drink 3 beers at night. Now I'm drinking 6. Do you find yourself going through withdrawals? You're waking up in the morning with the shakes or high anxiety, those sorts of things. So we're looking at, is it having an impact on your life? And so, yeah, that's when you're talking about hedonism having an effect. If it's starting to impact your external world, then yeah, that's a problem. So, pornography drives the internet, right? It makes up some ridiculous.
That's what I've heard, but I mean, who knows?
Well,
I don't participate.
They're the first ones to really come up with processing credit cards, right? Because they were really the first e-commerce. People weren't buying things online until they, pay-per-view stuff like that. They've driven graphics, right? Getting videos online. NBC wasn't dying to get the internet going because it was going to kill their business model.
Yeah.
They've driven a lot of things. So there's a lot of people who look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean everybody who looks at it has a problem? No. But are you finding yourself spending money on it? That's a huge one. And this whole generation with the OnlyFans now, that's a big criteria. So we look at, why is internet porn free?
That's a very good question. I'm guessing, based on research that I've done for scientific purposes,
yes,
is that it's just like a taste.
Yep.
And then they'll suck you in with, you want the premium stuff. You gotta.
They're called raincoaters. We're looking for guys in raincoats. So all of the free pornography on the internet is meant to attract that 10% of guys. And the reason they're called raincoaters, it's an old term in the pornography industry, but you remember when they used to have pornography at newsstands or at video stores, and you'd walk in with a big raincoat and a big trench coat.
Do that
and a
special
hat.
door in the back.
Yeah, with your sunglasses on so no one would recognize you. That's who they're looking to get. So all of that is a free taste, and we're trying to get to that 10% who are willing to pay money. So we'll have all this free stuff out there, and 90% of you are just going to be fine with the free stuff. Are you part of the 10% that's paying? And I don't have those percentages perfectly.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Do you have a partner who told you if you don't stop looking at it, they're going to leave you, and you still find yourself looking at it? Do you find yourself watching it for a longer period of time than you thought? Like, man, an hour just went by because I'm searching for my film. Are you finding?
Because I've seen most of the things already, and I'm like 10 pages in. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I digress.
Exactly. And am I looking? Do I have exposure issues and tolerance issues? So I'm looking at I have to look deeper and deeper for the thing I need, because the thing I need is getting out more and more fringe.
Yeah.
Am I finding myself thinking about it during work? Am I having DE or ED? So ED, obviously erectile dysfunction. Now you're with a girl in the real world. She doesn't look like a porn star. The lighting isn't great. She's not, waxed, fake tanned, hair and makeup done. And you're going, dude, I'm used to seeing a hot chick, or used to seeing 30, because most people don't just click on one porn and that's the end of their search. When we look at search histories, right?
Yeah.
They go on. So am I having, erectile dysfunction as a result, or am I having what we call DE, delayed ejaculation? I'm with my partner, I'm able to have sex, but I can't climax, because normally I climax by seeing 40 different naked women, meaning I've gone through a bunch of videos. So when people go, oh, how do I know hedonism crossed the line? And can I have hedonistic behaviors in my life? Yeah, people can look at porn and not have all those bad things happen. Some people can. The people who can't, I'm sorry, you're never probably going to be able to watch porn again, because it's devastated your life. People have left you. Maybe you've lost jobs. When pornography first came on the scene, there were so many congressmen who were looking at it on their internet, and they were So and there's people who still get fired over it, right?
Yeah.
Sending stuff to people they shouldn't be sending it to. So we start going, okay, we can have fun, but when it starts having deleterious effects on our workplace, our relationships, our health, then that hedonism has crossed the line, and we need to step back. Can you step back? That's going to be hard.
Makes sense. Well, we got to wrap this bad boy up.
Yeah.
We've been here. I could talk to you forever. Do you have a private practice at all, or do you?
I've kind of given it. I do have a private practice. It's very small. It's just some clients I kept on, but my management job takes most of my time.
Okay, so do you have so it's
So
not a practice. Are you accepting new patients?
No, not at this time.
So you should plug your.
No.
No.
No. I mean, look, private practitioners are great. I just at this time, my management gig is too big, and I wouldn't have enough mental bandwidth to give anyone else besides the few people I see the correct attention that they need.
Okay, no, it makes sense.
If we're gonna plug something,
let's plug something, man.
Budo Videos. BudoVideos.com. I have some jiu-jitsu instructionals out there. I know it's a very weird plug, but for a guy talking about this, but I also sell jiu-jitsu instructionals.
All right, yeah. So Budo Videos, which is BUDOVIDEOS.
Yeah,
Budo Videos. And Brent, you got to spell your last name.
Littell.
All right, so Brent. You got to pronounce that too. How do you?
Brent Littell.
Littell. See, I still messed that up, but
it's okay. It's a fake name anyway. No, meaning my people came over on a boat and people here couldn't pronounce it and spell it, so they adulterated it.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, check them out, Budo Video. So, what are your DVDs about? Are they?
I have a couple. Probably my bestseller is the Lockdown Half Guard.
Okay.
So if you're really into the lockdown on the Eddie Bravo system, that's a good one. And then another one of my best sellers is going to be side control escapes. It's just a whole DVD on side control escapes, because that's a position that people get stuck in. It's probably the worst position in jiu-jitsu. People would rather be mounted a lot of times rather than have somebody who's really heavy in side control on top of them. So I tackle that.
Okay. Yeah. And just to point out, guys, Brent is a black belt in both gi jiu-jitsu, IBJJF organization, but then also he's a black belt under Eddie Bravo. Was an instructor at his school. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was Eddie's 6th black belt. I started with him from the beginning, and of his school, 10th Planet, and I was his first fundamentals instructor at his headquarters that he taught out of. So I ran his fundamentals program, and then he ran his advanced program.
Yeah. So that's his background. So when we're talking about these things, some of you guys are like, what the hell is he talking about? Side mounters, control, whatever. These are all
Yes.
jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu techniques, or they call it now jiu-jitsu. I'm not sure. There's some drama going on with that.
American jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, American jiu-jitsu
I hate
or
that.
freedom jiu-jitsu. I don't know.
Yeah.
But then also, just to kind of give your background, you were a clinical. Is it called a clinical therapist, or how's that?
Yeah, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist,
Mhm.
and I've had a lot of experiences doing that. I've worked in Medi-Cal field, which is working with our lower socioeconomic individuals, and then I went out into the kind of for pay private arena. I've run drug treatment centers, have run inpatient mental health facilities, and then I currently oversee a very large mental health and addiction medicine facility.
Yeah, when I met you, I think you were running the treatment centers, the
Yeah.
treatment centers. But yeah, so I just wanted to explain that. We didn't explain that at the beginning. That's how he has all this knowledge and authority on this information. And I was like, look,
It's just TikToks. That's where I learned it all
yeah,
from.
oh yeah, he's on TikTok. Listen to a 20-year-old tell him about life.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to point that out because this is not the first podcast episode that's recorded, but this is going to be the first episode that I'm going to show. I wanted to open hard. I know that you're coming with it, so I really appreciate it, and thank you for taking the time. He's coming from a long day of work, managing this giant facility, which remains nameless, and then he came over here, and so I really appreciate it, and thank you for taking the time.
Oh yeah, thank you for having me. Spreading awareness of suicide. It's a very important thing. It's Suicide Awareness Month. Spreading awareness of derealization, depersonalization is something very dear to my heart.
Yeah.
So I like that. And then spreading the knowledge about hedonism and the idea that people can have fun, but there's a point where it starts hurting them. And when it does, that's when we need to start trying to pull back on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree 100%. And also, guys, if you're listening to this, listen to my voice, I would recommend, if you have people that are special to you, tell them that you love them. You never know what people are going through in the back of their mind. Check in on people. If there's someone that you value and you haven't talked to them in a while, check on them and see how they're doing. But don't do the simple check. Hey, you all right, dude? Yeah, I'm right. Don't really check in on them and sincerely, see what's going on. I was fortunate. I got a friend. He's my guardian angel, Steve. You know who you are, Steve. I always got to plug you. I don't have to plug you, but I'm just mentioning you is that this guy checks on me, and that's the guy who saved my life, and got me the EMDR and set everything up. And I just, I was, yeah. And the crazy part is that's just who he is,
Right.
And so, but check on your friends, tell your loved ones that you love them. And if you're having a beef with someone that you normally have a relationship with, squash the beef, man, and just, fix all that stuff. Life is too short. But thanks again, man. I got to have you back on sometime soon whenever your schedule permits.
All right. I'm
right.
hoping all my things go well.
All right, cool. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.